Tales of Moonlight and Rain. Shiramine. White Peak. UedaAkinari. After being given permission to pass by the guard at the Osakayama checkpoint, he headed for the eastern provinces. He could not resist the beautiful scenery of the autumn leaves on the mountains, so he decided to continue his pilgrimage to various provinces, traveling down the Takeda Road. Among his many sights were Nurumagata, where the beach plovers play by leaving footprints in the sand, the smoke from Md Fuji, Yukishimagara, Kyomagaseki, the bays of Oizo and Koiso, the fields of Musashino with the beautiful blooming of purpuras, the calm morning view of the sea at Shiagama, and the old thatched roof house of a hunter in Kisagata. I was drawn to the sights of the boat bridges at Sano and the piers at Kiso, but I also wanted to see the famous sights and Yutamakura of the western part of Japan, so in the autumn of the third year of the Ninnan era, I passed through Naniwa, where the reed flowers were falling, and continued my journey, feeling the salty breeze at Suma and Akashi Bay deeply on my body, to Shikoku, where I decided to stay for a while at a place called Hayashi in Miyazaka, Sanuki. This was not a place to rest after a long journey that had involved sleeping outdoors, but a hermitage I had established as a place to practice my asceticism and to pray for enlightenment. I heard that the tomb of Emperor Sutoku was located in a place called Shiramine near this village, and wanted to visit it, so I climbed Shiramine in early October. The pines and cypresses were thickly growing, and even on a clear day with blue clouds, it was dark and damp, as if a light rain was falling. The steep peak of Chigigatake towered behind the tomb, and clouds and mist rose from the bottom of the deep valley, 1,000 feet deep, making it feel like even what was in front of me was unclear. In a place where the trees are slightly clear, there is a pile of earth and 3 stones piled up, but it is completely covered with brambles and vines, and looks somehow sad. When I think that this may be the tomb of Emperor Sutoku, my heart is filled with gloom, and I cannot tell whether it is a dream or reality. When I think back, I saw him face to face when he was still emperor, and he played politics in the Shishinden and Siriodan thrones, and all the civil and military officials served him with reverence, saying that he was a truly wise emperor. Even after he abdicated the throne to Emperor Kono, he lived in a magnificent palace in the retired emperor's palace, but I never imagined that he would pass away under the thickets of a deep mountain where the only thing visible was the footprints of deer and there was no one to attend to him. When I thought about how even though he held the honorable status of being the emperor who rules the world, the karma of his past life was so clearly attached to him that he was unable to escape his sins, I was reminded of the transience of this human world, and tears welled up endlessly. I wanted to offer a memorial service for the dead all night, so I sat on a flat stone in front of the grave and quietly chanted sutras. I then composed a waka poem that came to my mind and dedicated it to the dead. Matsuyama no wa wakashiki wa kawaraji wa katanaku kimi ga naramasarikari. The scenery of the waves crashing on the sea of Matsuyama has probably remained unchanged since ancient times, but Emperor Sutoku, who loved this scenery all his life, is now dead. I continued to chant sutras with all my heart, without relaxing my mind. The dew on the grass mixed with the tears that were overflowing, deeply wetting my sleeves. As the sun went down, the night view of the deep mountains took on an eerie and strange appearance, and when I sat on the stone and wrapped my body in fallen leaves, It was very cold, my heart became calm, I was chilled to the marrow of my bones, and for some reason I felt very refreshed. The moon had risen, but the overgrown trees blocked the moonlight, and I couldn't see the irises. Feeling lonely in the darkness, he was about to fall asleep, but sure enough, he heard a voice calling out to him, "Eni, Eni." Opening his eyes and peering into the darkness, he saw a strange figure, a tall and emaciated person, standing facing him, though he could not see clearly the features of his face or the color and pattern of his clothes. Saigyō was a Buddhist monk, so he was not frightened and asked, "Who is it that has come?" The man replied, "I came to reply to the poem you composed earlier," and recited, "A ship that was swept away by the waves crashing on Matsuyama has been unable to return to the capital and has rotted away in vain." Saigyō then said, "I'm glad you came." It was then that Saigyō realized that this was the ghost of Emperor Sutoku, and he knelt on the ground, bowed, and cried, "But why is it that you are still lost and have not attained Buddhahood? I envy you for being able to escape this impure and tainted world and become a Buddha, and I had hoped that you would be able to share in this connection to Buddhahood through tonight's memorial service. But it is a shame and a sad thing that you have appeared here without having attained Buddhahood. I hope you will simply forget the delusions of this world and achieve the position of Buddhahood," he admonished with all his heart. Hearing this, Emperor Sutoku burst out in laughter and said, "You may not know this, but the recent chaos in the world is my doing. While I was alive, I was devoted to evil, which caused the Hōgen Rebellion, and even after I died, I continued to curse the imperial court. Just watch closely. I will soon cause great chaos throughout the country." Hearing these words, Saigyō wiped away tears and said, "I am shocked at your heartless feelings. You have a reputation for being intelligent, so I believe you are well aware of the principles of the imperial way. I would like to ask you a question as a test. Did you think that the Hōgen Rebellion was in accordance with the divine command of Amaterasu Amakami? Or was it planned out of your own selfish desires? Please tell me in detail." Then Emperor Sutoku's face changed color and he said, "Listen carefully. The imperial throne is the highest position for human beings. If the emperor, who stands at the top, should disrupt the way of humanity, then it is the way of a wise man to follow the command of heaven, respond to the wishes of the people, and put down the emperor, even if he is the emperor himself. In the first year of the Eiji era, I abdicated the throne at the command of my father, Emperor Toba, even though I had committed no crime, and handed over the imperial throne to a 3-year-old son named Narihito. Looking at this, I cannot say that I was greedy for people. When Narihito died young, I and the world thought that it was natural that my son Shigehito should rule the world, but I was hindered by the jealousy of Baifukumanin, and the fourth prince, Mas. Wasn't it a deep regret that Shigehito had usurped the throne? Shigehito has the talent to rule the country. But how much ability does Masahito have? It was my father's mistake to consult with the empress in the harem about the succession without assessing whether the person had virtue or not. However, while my father was alive, I was filial and sincere as a son and never showed any dissatisfaction. But after my father passed away, I wondered if I could continue to put up with misfortune and complain forever, so I finally mustered up my courage and decided to raise an army. Zhou, even when the dynasty, as a vassal, defeated the ruler Chu in the Yin period, he obeyed the command of heaven and answered the wishes of the people, and the task was accomplished. Heaven recognized it, and it became a great undertaking that laid the foundation for the 800-year world. Moreover, how can it be said that it is unreasonable for me, who has the qualifications and status to rule the country, to try to replace a mistaken government that was established by the power of a woman? This person became a monk and became immersed in Buddhism, and out of a desire to escape worldly desires and find salvation in the next life, he forcibly preached the true path of human beings by linking it to the Buddhist theory of cause and effect, and mixed in Buddhism, which should be based on the teachings of Gyoshin, that is, the teachings of Confucianism. In an attempt to convince himself, he said in a rough voice. Saigyō, showing no signs of fear, leaned forward on his knees and said, "What you are saying is based on the principles of human reason, and may appear to be in line with that principle, but in reality you have not escaped the realm of ugly human desires and worldly desires. There is no need to look to the example of distant China. Even in our country, Emperor Hōgen appointed the youngest prince, Prince Uji, as crown prince, over his elder brother, Prince Osasagi. After the emperor died, these brothers competed for the throne, with neither of them wanting to ascend to the throne. 3 years have passed and it looks like the rivalry will never end. However, the king of Uji became deeply concerned and asked, 'Why should I continue to live and cause trouble to the people of the world?' And so he committed suicide, so the prince had no choice but to give his older brother the throne. This is how one should respect the dignity of the throne, uphold the humane principles of filial piety to one's father and brotherly love, and live with true sincerity and no selfish desires. This is perhaps what is meant by the way of the sages and wise men. In our country, Confucianism is highly revered and is used as the theoretical foundation for the way of the emperor, as the king of Uji invited Wani of Peksh to, since they were the first to learn. The hearts of these two princes can be said to be the spirit of Chinese sages. I have also heard from others that the book Mencius states, at the beginning of the Zhou dynasty, King Wu was outraged by the tyranny of the Chu in the Yin period and defeated him, thus bringing peace to the people of the world. However, as a minister, this should not be considered assassination of the sovereign. He killed an immoral man who was neither benevolent nor righteous. So, all Chinese books, from scriptures to historical strategies to poetry, have been brought to our country by the will of the gods, but one book called Mencius has not yet reached Japan. It is said that the ship carrying this book always encounters a storm and sinks on the way. The reason is that since Amaterasu Amakami founded the country and began to rule, the descendants of emperors have been on the throne for generations, and if such a cunning teaching that talks people down with words were to be passed down, a traitor in future generations would appear who would not consider it a sin to seize the throne. The 8 million gods hate this book and create a divine wind to capsize the ship. So many of the teachings of Chinese sages are not suitable for our national style. Also, in the classic of poetry, it says, even if brothers quarrel among themselves, they should unite to prevent any external humiliation that may occur. But you have forgotten the love between your brothers, and, even before your father the emperor passed away and his body was still warm in the funeral palace, you raised your army, flags waving, bows and arrows brandished, and fought. the world is a vessel determined by God, and the imperial throne is determined by the divine will. Therefore, even if a person tries to seize it for his own selfish desires, it is right that he cannot do so. You did not understand this and started a war. Even if Prince Shigehido's accession to the throne is something that everyone in the world hopes for, when he did not bestow the blessing of virtue and peace on you, but instead used perverse methods to cause chaos in the world, those who had admired you until yesterday suddenly hated you and became your sworn enemies. As a result, not only were they not able to fulfill their wishes, but they received punishments unprecedented in ancient times and passed away in this remote countryside. From now on, I sincerely ask that you forget your past grudges and return to the Pure Land. This is your wish. Saigyō spoke without hesitation. Hearing this, Emperor Sutoku sighed deeply and said, "You have just judged my sins and corrected the matter, but what you say is true. However, there is nothing I can do. I have been banished to this island and am confined to my house in Matsuyama, Takato, with no one to serve me except for those who bring me 3 meals a day. But when I hear the cries of geese flying in the night sky close to my pillow, I wonder if they are flying off to the capital, and even this brings me nostalgia. And when I hear the cries of plovers calling to their friends on Cape Suzaki at dawn, this too becomes a source of melancholy. Even if a miracle were to occur in which the crow's head turns white, as in the Chinese Enten story, he would have no chance of returning to the capital, and would surely end his life on this remote seaside, becoming a ghost wandering the shore. So, thinking only of a comfortable life in the next world, he copied out the 5 Mahayana Sutras, but it would be sad to leave them behind on this lonely, rural seaside where there is no temple of any kind. Even if he were to rot on this rough shore, he asked that at least his handwriting be allowed into the capital, and sent the following waka poem along with the sutras to his younger brother, Kakusho Hoshino of Ninnaji Temple. Hamakidori Atoa Mayakoni Keo Hidamo. Miwa Matsuyamani Odawana Maizo Naku. Like Hamakidori, only my handwritten copy of the sutra travels to the capital, but I can only cry out in Matsuyama, longing for the day I can return to the capital. However, Shanagon Shinzei suspected something wrong and told the emperor. Perhaps this was sent by Emperor Sutoku with the intention of cursing the emperor and the world, so the letter was sent back as it was, which was truly regrettable. It is not uncommon in both Japan and China for brothers to become enemies in a battle for the throne, but even so, he thought he had done something sinful, repented, and copied out the sutra in order to atone for his sins. However, no matter what obstacles there were, the emperor ignored the Gishinho, which offered to reduce the sentences of close relatives of the emperor, and would not even allow his brother's handwriting into the capital. This is what has caused him to feel an eternal grudge. In the end, he was determined to turn the copied sutra to the path of evil and use its powers to clear his grudge, so he cut his finger, wrote a prayer in its blood, and drowned it and the sutra in the sea at Shido. After that, he never met anyone, shut himself deep inside his house, and made a great wish to become a demon king and clear his grudge, but his wish was granted when the Hōgen Rebellion broke out. First, Noburi encouraged Yoshitomo's arrogant desire for a higher position than he deserved, and made him his ally. That Yoshitomo was my hated enemy. His father, Tamiyoshi, and his samurai brothers all sacrificed their lives for me during the Hōgen Rebellion, but Yashitomo alone opposed me. Thanks to Tamatomo's bravery and the military strategies of Tamiyoshi and Tadamasa, victory seemed on the horizon, but the southwest wind burned down the main camp at Shirakawa Palace, resulting in defeat. After escaping from Shirakawa Palace, I hurt my feet on the steepness of Nyoigatake and had to wrap myself in chestnut wood cut by a lumberjack to protect myself from the rain and dew. After much hardship, I was finally captured and exiled to this island, but it was all rooted in Yashitomo's wicked plan to burn down the palace. In retaliation, Yashitomo's heart was made violent and greedy, leading him to take part in Noburi's conspiracy, and he committed the grave sin of drawing an arrow against the emperor, and was hunted down just like Kayamori, who had no military skill. Furthermore, the punishment for killing his father, Tamiyoshi, came upon him, and he was ambushed by his retainers, which was a divine punishment. Furthermore, Shanagon Shinzei always presented himself as a knowledgeable scholar, was narrow-minded, arrogant, and unkind, so I tempted him to become an enemy of Noburi and Yashitomo, and in the end he fled his home and hid in a cave in Mtuji, but was eventually tracked down, captured, and his head was displayed at Rokugio Gawara. This was the end of my sin of flattery, of sending back my copy of the sutra. With this momentum, in the summer of Oho, I shortened the life of Baifukumanin, and in the spring of Choken II, I cursed Tadamaki and killed him. I also passed away in the autumn of that year, but even after my death, the fire of my anger continued to burn vigorously and was not extinguished, and I finally became a great demon king and the leader of over 300 subordinates. My subordinates see people's happiness and turn it into misfortune, and see peace in the world and cause trouble. However, Kayamori alone has been bestowed with great worldly good fortune as a human being, and as a result all his family members have become high-ranking officials and are running the country as they please. However, because his eldest son, Shigemori, loyally assists him, the time for revenge has not yet come, despite his tyranny. But you too, please watch carefully. Haishi's fate will not last long either. I will definitely take revenge on Masahito just as much as he has treated me cruelly. His voice gradually grew louder and more frightening. Saigyō simply closed his mouth and faced him, saying, "My lord, you are so far tied to the evil ties of the demon world, so far removed from Amida's pure land, so far away from it that you seem to be billions of miles away, so I will not say anything more." At that moment, the surrounding peaks and valleys shook, and the wind blew so hard that it blew down the forests, sending sand high into the sky. Then, in the blink of an eye, a cluster of will-o'-the-wisp flames flared up from under Emperor Sutoku's knees, making the mountains and valleys bright as day. Looking closely at the emperor in the light, he was red with anger, his unkempt hair was disheveled and hanging down to his knees, his eyes were raised as if he was glaring at me, and he was breathing hot and painfully. The clothes he was wearing were persimmon-colored and dark as if they were stained with soot, and the nails on his hands and feet were long and sharp like the claws of an animal, making him look just like a demon king, and he was both shameful and terrifying to look at. Then he called out to the sky, "Sagami, Sagami." With a "ha," a shape-shifting kite-like bird swooped down from the sky and knelt before the emperor, waiting for his orders. The emperor asked the shape-shifting bird, "Why don't you take Shigemori's life and make Masahito and Kayamori suffer?" The shape-shifting bird replied, "Emperor Gashirakua's good fortune has not yet run out, and he cannot come close to Shigemori's loyalty and sincerity. However, in 12 years, Shigemori's life will run out. When he dies, the good fortune of the Haika clan will also perish." Hearing this, the emperor clapped his hands in joy, and shouted, "I will kill all of the enemies of the hated Haika clan in the sea in front of me." His voice echoed through the valleys and peaks, and the frightening sound was indescribable. Saigyō, unable to hold back his tears at the sight of this sordid deed, recited another poem, encouraging the emperor to seek a connection with Buddhism. Yoshiya kimi mukashi no tamanoto kototomo kakaran nachiwa naninikawazen. Even if you once lived in the Golden Palace, now that you have passed away and left this world, you no longer have any sense of status or superiority in this world. May you rest in peace. Once death comes, royalty and commoners are the same, he thought, and was so moved that he sang the song out loud without thinking. The emperor seemed to be moved when he heard this, and gradually the color in his face lightened and the devil fire gradually diminished and disappeared, until it finally vanished from sight. But where did the shape-shifting bird also go? It disappeared without a trace, and the moon, which had been hidden beyond the peaks for about 10 days, was hidden beyond the peaks. In the darkness among the lush trees, it was impossible to distinguish anything, so he felt as if he was wandering through a dream. Soon the dawn sky was filled with the refreshing song of the morning birds leaving their roosts, so Saigyō once again dedicated a volume of the Diamond Sutra to the dead, descended the mountain and returned to his hermitage. He once again calmly recalled the events of the previous night, and found that what the emperor had told him about the Hōgen Rebellion, the people's personal lives, and the dates of the rebellion all matched the facts without any mistake, so he was deeply afraid and did not tell anyone about it. 13 years later, in the autumn of the 3rd year of the Jisho era, Taira no Shigemori fell ill and passed away, and Kayamori became extremely tyrannical, not shying away from anyone. He hated Emperor Gashirakua and locked him in Toba Imperial Villa, and then moved him to the thatched palace in Fukuhara, where he tortured him. The people were turned away from the people, and when Yoritamo took the opportunity to raise his troops from the eastern provinces and Yashinaka marched to Kyoto from the northern provinces, driving snow from the north, even the Haika clan fled the capital and fled to the western seas, eventually reaching the Sanuki Sea, Shido, and Yashima, where many of their brave warriors became prey to the fish, and they were cornered at Akamagasaki and Denura, where the young Emperor Antoku drowned. Himself, and all the Haika generals were wiped out. The whole story was exactly as Emperor Sutoku had said it would be, and it is a frightening and mysterious tale. Afterwards, the Emperor's shrine was built beside the tomb, beautifully decorated with jewels, and His Majesty has long been worshipped. Anyone traveling to Sanuki should make a sacred offering and respectfully worship this precious deity.